I recognize the member for Prince Albert Northcote.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From many people's strength. This motto expresses Saskatchewan's multicultural heritage, the combination of First Nations and Métis cultures, and the key role of immigration in the province. Mr. Speaker, for centuries we've had people coming to Saskatchewan, even though they didn't know that was the name of Saskatchewan, and today we have people coming to Saskatchewan. In fact, Mr. Speaker, our newest population figures show that we have 1,132,640 people that now call Saskatchewan home. That's Statistics Canada numbers. Mr. Speaker, that is Saskatchewan's growth rate. That is the second highest in Canada, a growth rate of 1.56%, Mr. Speaker. We have a province that is made up of people of all races, all cultures, all colours. Mr. Speaker, all ages. We have the very young and we have the very wise, Mr. Speaker. In caucus, we have a team that works together. We relish the good times, we pull together through the bad times. In 2007, the Saskatchewan people asked the Saskatchewan Party to govern. In 2011, they asked us again to continue to govern this province. They like what we're doing, and we do not take that mandate lightly. Mr. Speaker, with the diversity on this side of the House, from north to south, from east to west, we have young and not so young members. We have members that have many years of wisdom and experience, and those that can count their political experience in months. Mr. Speaker, we have women and men, some with many degrees, some with the degrees from the School of Hard Knocks. We have rural and urban members. We have members with skills in a wide variety of fields and professions. But, like I said, we have a team, Mr. Speaker. That is what's reflected in this budget today that was delivered last week. That is what we are debating and discussing. Mr. Speaker, I couldn't be more pleased with the budget that we have presented, the 8th balanced budget in a row, Mr. Speaker. We have many thanks to our constituents, and I'd like to add mine at this time. Mr. Speaker, the people of Prince Albert Northcote asked me to govern, and I take that so seriously, Mr. Speaker, and I thank them humbly from the bottom of my heart. Mr. Speaker, as many here have said, it takes a strong support system to help you to deal with the political role that we have been asked. Mr. Speaker, my strongest supporter is my husband, Alan. My strongest critic is my husband, Alan. Mr. Speaker, we have 3 children. Some of them are married. We have a daughter that is a teacher of English as a second language. I couldn't be more proud of her, Mr. Speaker. She has taken her skills to many countries, taught in Japan, and brought those skills back to Saskatchewan. Mr. Speaker, our son and his wife have 2 of our grandchildren. They live out in Ottawa. We're trying to work on getting them back. Cecily and Everett are growing bigger every day, Mr. Speaker. I always thought that my kids, were really kind of smart. In fact, pretty smart. But, Mr. Speaker, grandchildren are amazing. They are absolutely brilliant. Our youngest son lives in Calgary along with his wife, Len. Well, that's the nickname she likes to be called, and our youngest granddaughter, Jasmine Victoria Jurgens. Mr. Speaker, she is a joy to behold, and she already knows a whole lot about the IT system, Mr. Speaker. Being that our son, Tyler, has an information systems degree, he makes sure to Skype with us every week or occasionally a couple of days during the week, Mr. Speaker. She knows the sound when that when the computer goes on, and she's waiting to see Grandpa and Grandma, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to just reflect back a little bit on November 6th of 2011. Our little granddaughter, Cecily, with the help of her father, wished me good luck grandma. Mr. Speaker, that still rings in my ears and pulls at my heartstrings. Mr. Speaker, those grandchildren are absolutely wonderful. I recommend everyone to get some of their own. Mr. Speaker, we have staff in PA. My constituency assistant, Donna Barr, is an incredible woman. She brings so many talents to the table that I am pleased to leave the office in good hands when I am down here doing the work that the people have asked me to do. Mr. Speaker, I have a casual assistant, Brent Gerlach, that also helps with the IT system so that when I have Facebook and website work that needs to be done, he's right there, Mr. Speaker. I have a casual assistant, Pam, that steps in, bless her, just occasionally to answer the phones when I'm not there. Mr. Speaker, the MLAs in this Assembly on this side of the House have been absolutely amazing, Mr. Speaker, whether they have tons of experience or whether they're brand new. They welcome me into this Legislative Assembly. They help me along with things that I maybe don't know so much about. I like to think that maybe I give them one or two ideas, Mr. Speaker, and I couldn't thank them more than to say thank you. Mr. Speaker, we have an incredible behind-the-scenes team of staff that help us with issues that we need to get together when I go to the ministers' offices with issues that my constituencies have brought to me. They are great. They help me out. They give us the answers. They help our people out. Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, we also have a strong leader, Mr. Speaker, a dynamic, energetic Premier. He is a leader with a vision. He is a leader that listens. Our leader has a plan. We, together, are a great team, and we take our responsibility seriously, Mr. Speaker. A team that listens to the people, but we do more than that, Mr. Speaker. We then take action. So when we have 49 members of the Legislative Assembly with every type of skill set that there could be, from farmers and football players, teachers and professors, pilots and parliamentarians, we have lawyers and leaders, healthcare workers, dietitians, social worker, lab tech, businesswomen and businessmen. Mr. Speaker, we also have a team that moves forward into the future. Mr. Speaker, let's contrast that with the leader on the opposite side of the House, Mr. Speaker, a weak NDP leader. No plan, no vision. Constantly says, well, we'll get to it. Mr. Speaker, in fact, the people that they attract to their party, our candidate, their candidate in Prince Albert Carleton, had this to say: there is no need for a plan. That deflects from the issues. Mr. Speaker, which team do you want to follow? Which team do you want to be a part of? Which team do the people of our province want to be a part of? I know which team I want to be a part of, the Saskatchewan Party team, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Prince Albert Northcote is a very dynamic constituency. We have a little bit of everything there. We have the very young, and which I like to say are exuberant. We have the wise, which some people call seniors, Mr. Speaker. We have every level of education there is, from pre-K to post-secondary. In fact, Mr. Speaker, we have every level of university, every type of university. We have programs from the University of Regina. We have programs from the University of Saskatchewan. We have a campus of the First Nations University. Mr. Speaker, we have SIIT, we have GDI. Mr. Speaker, I could go on and on. In Prince Albert alone, we have a microcosm of our population, Mr. Speaker. The only thing we don't have are canola and wheat fields. We have everything else. We have a bridge, we have a hospital, we have business, Mr. Speaker. We have a good life, Mr. Speaker, a very good life. The people in Prince Albert are happy to be in Prince Albert. Mr. Speaker, we are within an hour of almost any fishing and resort centre and tourism that you could imagine. Mr. Speaker, people are surprised when they come from out of province and come north to Prince Albert. In Prince Albert, we don't call us from that. We don't say that we're from the north, Mr. Speaker. There's still a lot of province above, to the north of us. But when we get to La Ronge, the people in La Ronge say they are from the north. Mr. Speaker, I don't hear anything from the member from Athabasca or the member from Cumberland about the beauty of the north, Mr. Speaker. But I assure you, we have a beautiful part of the province in our north. Doom and gloom, Mr. Speaker, all the time. NDP, doom and gloom. We can count on NDP being doom and gloom. Mr. Speaker, recently we opened up the Highway 11, which is a double-lane highway from Saskatoon to Prince Albert, so we are connecting the south to the north, Mr. Speaker. Many people say that Prince Albert is a gateway, but it is also a gathering ground because that highway brings people into Prince Albert. Mr. Speaker, as well, we have just recently opened the St. Louis Bridge. That is a bridge that connects with the primary weight corridor all the way from Assiniboia in the south all the way to La Ronge in the north, Mr. Speaker. Another corridor that brings people and goods and services into our city and into the north, Mr. Speaker. It is no secret that we have the Diefenbaker Bridge, Mr. Speaker. In 2003, when the Diefenbaker Bridge needed repairs, the members opposite refused to pay even 50% of the cost, Mr. Speaker. I do not know why they would not consider that the Diefenbaker Bridge was an integral part of Highway 2, but their former highways minister, Mr. Speaker, said the bridge wasn't an integral part. Mr. Speaker, perhaps they should drive north and come to PA to see that it is a part of our highway, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the NDP said it isn't the government's responsibility, and I don't think it's something we are accountable for at this point. Mr. Speaker, that's a stark contrast to the way our Saskatchewan Party government believes that the Diefenbaker Bridge should be dealt with, Mr. Speaker. When our bridge had difficulties and we needed to repair it, Mr. Speaker, $4.2 million to bring the bridge to primary weight standards, no questions asked, Mr. Speaker. What did they do on that side of the House? They can spout and sputter all they want, Mr. Speaker. They dismissed the integral importance of that bridge, Mr. Speaker. We did not. We have different priorities. PA is important. We took that responsibility seriously. We didn't stop there, Mr. Speaker. In 2012, we paid for $1,697,493 for Diefenbaker traffic accommodations. As well, Mr. Speaker, we paid $2,003,918 for paving repairs on the Diefenbaker Bridge, completed in 2013. Mr. Speaker, we didn't stop there. In 2011, I want to talk about our commitment to the second bridge, Mr. Speaker. In 2011, the NDP promised they would build a second bridge in Prince Albert. Again, all talk, no action. They had 16 years, and during those 16 years, when they had power, they did nothing for that bridge. They said it wasn't their responsibility. Mr. Speaker, I do believe that when we are discussing record to record, it would be fair, more than fair, Mr. Speaker, to use 7 years of their power to 7 years of our record governing this province, Mr. Speaker. So, the members opposite like to talk about perhaps we should talk about the 70s. Well, Mr. Speaker, how about in 1977? when PA needed a second bridge. The NDP study said, nope, don't need a second bridge. Don't need it until PA's population grows to 50,000. Well, Mr. Speaker, the voice of Prince Albert has been heard. When our bridge went down and the people started talking about getting a second bridge, Mr. Speaker, I spoke to my colleagues. And, Mr. Speaker, last year, my colleagues, thank you to all of them, agreed that we should partner to build a bridge that the City of Prince Albert asked for, Mr. Speaker. In 2011, the NDP didn't have any funding from the federal government. They just promised. They can promise all they want. They can spout and sputter. Mr. Speaker, our commitment still stands. We are partnering with the provincial government and the city. To date, Mr. Speaker, our province has committed our share. The federal government has committed their share. The city has not committed their share. Mr. Speaker, Prince Albert is more than a bridge. Prince Albert has people, has diversity. We also have educational institutions, Mr. Speaker, as I spoke about some of them in post-secondary. It doesn't stop there, Mr. Speaker. We have educational institutions. In fact, Mr. Speaker, when the NDP talk about where did all the money go, Prince Albert can be very pleased to report that we spent $14.7 million for the new École St. Anne School, which was completed in 2011. We can discuss the $12.2 million for a state-of-the-art gym, Mr. Speaker, in the Carleton Community High School. And we can talk about the $389,000 for the restoration of King George School. That's where some of the money went specifically into Prince Albert, Mr. Speaker. We also have 338 new childcare spaces and 14 new pre-K programs. Mr. Speaker, some of those programs are in the schools. I think that is a wonderful idea that our government decided to do, was to create pre-K schools that would be attached to schools. Mr. Speaker, many times we have single parents that drop off their children for pre-K and at the same time drop their children off for school. That is what we do as a government. We don't talk just about dollars and cents, Mr. Speaker. We put into action our plan and we see the results and the improvement to the families of our province. Mr. Speaker, in this budget of 15-16, students across the province will also benefit from the inclusion of $4.6 million for supports for learning funding for school divisions to continue funding announced in the fall of 2014. Mr. Speaker, our budget very clearly indicated that we have more funds for additional English as an additional language support. Mr. Speaker, I have a teacher in the family who is a very brilliant teacher, very dynamic, determined, highly intelligent. She worked hard to get her advanced certification so that she could be highly qualified to teach English as a second language, Mr. Speaker. In our province, we continue to bring people in from other countries. Mr. Speaker, what my daughter, Shauna, reports to me is that many times, Mr. Speaker, those children that are coming in have more than 2 other languages that they know before they ever learn English, Mr. Speaker. What a dynamic diversity that we are adding to our province for our future benefit. Mr. Speaker, last week the Leader of the Opposition claimed we cut English as an additional language funding. Mr. Speaker, we have to correct the record because he is just plain wrong. EAL funds, or English as an additional language, are added. Last year we added an additional $1 million commitment to support EAL. $588,000 of that money went out in last year's budget, 2014-15. This year, we commit the rest of the $1 million, which is $420,000, Mr. Speaker, to fund additional English as an additional language supports to deliver on commitments that we made to the school divisions. Mr. Speaker, I am very pleased to highlight our record that we do what we say we're going to do. On that side of the House, Mr. Speaker, all talk, no action, all sputter. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we take action. Mr. Speaker, this year we will also have $6 million in continued funding to support government's continued response to the recommendations from the Joint Task Force on improving First Nations and Métis education and employment outcomes in Saskatchewan. So, Mr. Speaker, why would we focus on First Nations and Métis? Well, Mr. Speaker, our government relations minister says it best when he says, a strong Saskatchewan economy needs the engagement of First Nations and Métis people if it is to grow even more. I think that's a pretty wise minister, Mr. Speaker. Very, very wise minister, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad to say that he is also the minister that I report to as a legislative secretary for Northern Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. As we know, in the north, there is a large number of First Nations and Métis people. In Prince Albert, we have a large number of Métis and First Nations people. Mr. Speaker, on the advice of the Joint Task Force on First Nations and Métis education and employment, our government is working to strengthen access to information services and supports that help people transition to school, to work, and to new communities. Just last fall, our government announced $3 million to improve education outcomes for First Nations and Métis children. This will expand the use of Help Me Tell My Story. Mr. Speaker, our adult basic education investments are unique in Canada because 25% of that funding, Mr. Speaker, is on reserve funding, Mr. Speaker. That is a few of the many benefits that a growing, prosperous province can provide, Mr. Speaker. To continue with our strong commitment to students, Mr. Speaker, we have in this budget $32.5 million for the Student Aid Fund. Mr. Speaker, $9 million goes to the Saskatchewan Advantage Scholarship, $6.5 million for the Saskatchewan Advantage Grant for Education Savings, and, Mr. Speaker, for our graduate retention program that we didn't remove, despite what the NDP tried to throw smoke screens up. We didn't remove it, Mr. Speaker. It is still there. $88 million of non-refundable tax credits, Mr. Speaker. It now is extended so that people that work in our province and have graduated can earn their tax credits, Mr. Speaker. We've also increased operation funding to technical institutes and federated colleges that will increase by 2%. Mr. Speaker, I do have a preference for post-secondary education, and as I said, in Prince Albert, we have many types of post-secondary education. What I am going to share with you now, Mr. Speaker, is some of the enhancements that will increase our labour market programs. Because, Mr. Speaker, many of the businesses in our province say we need more skilled people to work in our province, Mr. Speaker. One thing that we discovered is the adult basic education program had a wait list. It's still a wait list, but this year we are adding more seats, 200 more seats, Mr. Speaker, $600,000 increase. What it does is it provides a record investment of $25 million with a total program capacity of 8,780 seats. Mr. Speaker, one of the institutions in our city provides that ABE program training, and it is the Dumont Technical Institute, Mr. Speaker. We also added provincial training allowance. We added the Canada-Saskatchewan Job Grant, we increased it for a total fund of $4 million. We have employment assistance program for persons with disabilities, and we increased the Saskatchewan Apprenticeship and Trade Certification Commission by 300 additional seats, $1 million, Mr. Speaker. What that does is it provides a total number of seats of 7,000 to our province. Mr. Speaker, but what does that mean? Mr. Speaker, what it means is that people are recognizing that they have a gap in their skill set. They want to join in our strong economy. They want to go and get the jobs that are out there, Mr. Speaker, because finally, after just 7 years of a Saskatchewan Party government, a very short 7 years, Mr. Speaker, we have the lowest unemployment rate in the country. We have more people going to school than ever before, Mr. Speaker. We have people that are ready to have a job and are ready to work hard for it. Mr. Speaker, with the First Nations and Métis, we have provided an extra $20.2 million in direct support. What it does is it adds $428,000 to the Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technologies. Mr. Speaker, that's an increase of 24%. You would think that the members across the way, especially the members from Athabasca and Cumberland, would be voting for this budget. They should be coming across the floor and shaking my hand for doing such a good job. They should shake everybody's hand on this side of the floor. Mr. Speaker, we have added $75,000 to the First Nations University of Canada. We have added more money to the Gabriel Dumont Institute and to the Dumont Technical Institute. Mr. Speaker, since 2007-08, the provincial government provided $477.5 million in funding to post-secondary institutions, Mr. Speaker. How is this meeting our growth plan? Mr. Speaker, in our growth plan, we say, by 2020, the Government of Saskatchewan's goal is to ensure Saskatchewan leads the country in graduation rates, and the graduation disparity between First Nations and Métis students and their non-Aboriginal peers has been reduced by 50%. Mr. Speaker, we set goals, we set a plan, we are following through on it, unlike the NDP opposite who say that it just gets in the way of figuring out whether we should deal with any of the issues. Mr. Speaker, let's take a look at what the Vice Chief of the Federation of Saskatchewan Indian Nations has to say. Mr. Bobby Cameron, he says, and I quote, "The announcement of $2.2 million to one of our FSIN institutions, SIIT, they saw a pretty significant increase, so we're pleased with that, because we're getting more and more enrollment from our First Nations grade 12 graduates." He goes on to say, and I quote, "Obviously, that will go a long way in helping our students succeed in post-secondary education and trades." Mr. Speaker, Bobby Cameron was pretty excited about our budget. He says, considering the current physical environment, we can't be anything but pleased about the budget. Mr. Speaker, I would invite the members opposite to vote in favour of our budget. Yes. Mr. Speaker, let's look at another highly regarded person, Mr. Jeff Ritter of the Saskatchewan Apprenticeship and Trade Certification Commission. He says, "It was very nice to see the government support the increased demand that we're seeing for skilled tradespeople through the addition of 300 more seats." Mr. Speaker, post-secondary education, one of the things that the NDP so much asks for, is being recognized as a positive by many people in the province. Mr. Speaker, Larry Rosilla, the President and CEO of Saskatchewan Polytechnic, has this to say, and I quote, "We see our grant increase as a welcome investment in the future and really a vote of confidence in the work that we do at Saskatchewan Polytechnic. With the 2%, we will continue to seek opportunities to work with educational partners in the province and with industry to meet employer and student needs. Mr. Speaker, you don't have to take our word for it. All you have to do is look around the province, Mr. Speaker. People are happy with our budget. People are pleased with what we've done as a Saskatchewan party. Mr. Speaker, part of our budget includes health, Mr. Speaker. In our budget, we spend the largest amount on health. But, Mr. Speaker, between education, health, social services and assistance, we have nearly 75% of our budget spent there. Now, Mr. Speaker, I would think that the member from Saskatoon-Newtana would vote for our budget. Those are the things that she asked for when she replied to our budget. Mr. Speaker, we're 2 steps ahead of the NDP. We are already doing it. Mr. Speaker, regional health authorities this year will see $3.3 billion for operating funds and targeted initiatives of an increase of $55.7 million. We are committed to providing the best quality of health care for people in the province and for Prince Albert. Mr. Speaker, in Prince Albert alone, we had $2 million in planning for the renewal of the Victoria Hospital. That came through in last year's budget. Mr. Speaker, we also had $9 million for a family addiction treatment centre. That was completed in 2013. Mr. Speaker, I do hope the members opposite are listening, because that's where the money went. That's where the money went. Mr. Speaker, we also increased in 2014-15, an increase of $320,000 for the Urgent Action Fund for Prince Albert Parkland region. Mr. Speaker, we invested into people, into the senior supplement, the SED, and the drug program. Mr. Speaker, I'm deeply concerned about the NDP on that side of the House. 9 of them do not seem to be listening. Or, Mr. Speaker, is it because they can't hear? If their hearing is going, Mr. Speaker, I invite them to go to one of our brand new healthcare facilities that we have just recently built, and with one of the extra 400 doctors that we have in this province, it will not take them long to get their hearing checked, Mr. Speaker. If they need new surgery to improve their hearing, Mr. Speaker, we have the lowest surgical wait list in the province, Mr. Speaker. That is completely opposite what the NDP had under their work. Mr. Speaker, we know that it takes more than a hospital, which we've replaced in Moose Jaw, which we will be building in North Battleford. It takes more than long-term beds. We've increased our long-term beds and replaced the 1,200 that the NDP closed down. Mr. Speaker, our health region sees Pineview Terrace, 60-bed unit. Mr. Speaker, I invite everyone to come and take a look at the state-of-the-art long-term care facility. We increased it, Mr. Speaker. In fact, it was interesting when it was being built. Our health region submitted a plan to the government, and they said, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to increase those beds, Mr. Speaker. Increase the beds. Did we ever hear that under the NDP? No, we didn't. We heard, close the beds. We don't care. If you don't like it, leave, Mr. Speaker. That's what people did. Leave. Mr. Speaker, it takes more than all of us working together. It takes more than people that takes more than doctors and nurses. It takes more than hospital buildings. It takes people. Mr. Speaker, we supply the love to our loved ones when they go into those facilities. We supply the love when we have family members that need cancer treatments, Mr. Speaker. I am pretty sure that most, if not all of us, have been touched by cancer in one form or another, Mr. Speaker. We have increased the funding to the Cancer Centre. We've increased the funding to the health regions. Mr. Speaker, I hope that the members opposite would vote for our budget because, Mr. Speaker, we also are fulfilling our medical training commitments, Mr. Speaker. We are working to continue to develop a skilled workforce. We have 100 medical training seats, 120 medical resident seats, and 20 new practitioner seats that we are supporting with this budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have health, education, and social services and assistance that add up to 73.2% of all government expenses. Mr. Speaker, that spending is forecasted to be $10.4 billion. That is for this budget. It is an increase of 1.6% from 1.9%, pardon me, 1.9% increase from last year's budget. Mr. Speaker, what that is an increase of 67.7% since 07-08. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to stand behind the record of our government. We are working with the people of our province. We are working for the 1,132,640 people that now call Saskatchewan home. Mr. Speaker, we have a total of $5.5 billion for health care. Mr. Speaker, we also, in Prince Albert, with our new Saskatchewan International Physician Practice Assessment, or SIPA as we like to call it, we have 3 more doctors, Mr. Speaker. 3 more doctors for Prince Albert alone. So perhaps the members opposite, when they need a little help with health care, can come up to our lovely part of the province, Mr. Speaker. SIPA is a Made in Saskatchewan program that assesses international medical graduates on their education and clinical ability before allowing them to practice medicine. Since 2011, this program has added 18 new practicing physicians to the Prince Albert Parkland Health Region. Mr. Speaker, our community of Prince Albert highly welcomes these people to our province and to our fair city. Mr. Speaker, we have a seniors income plan that we've added to. Mr. Speaker, when the NDP say they are for the people, I don't believe them. Mr. Speaker, all we have to do is look at their 16 long years of being in power. Mr. Speaker, $90 per month for the seniors income plan. $90 for 16 years, Mr. Speaker, and they said, that is all you're getting, Mr. Speaker. We don't treat our seniors like that. What we did was we said in 2015-16, we will provide a total of $26.5 million to the seniors income plan to increase maximum monthly benefits by $10 per month. Do you know what that adds up to, Mr. Speaker? That adds up to $270 for single seniors and $235 for each member of a senior couple. Mr. Speaker, how many seniors will be benefiting from that? 14,000 seniors, Mr. Speaker. Imagine, we are considering the people of our province, 14,000 seniors. Along with those SIP benefits, these seniors will also be entitled to additional health benefits such as 1 free eye examination every 12 months, chiropractic services to a maximum of 12 services per year, a reduced prescription drug plan, semi-annual deductible, a home care subsidy, and an exemption from many of the charges under the Saskatchewan Aids to Independent Living program. Mr. Speaker, we didn't stop there. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we looked at other programs. We will be meeting our commitment to increase the monthly income threshold by $50 to $2,000 for the personal care home benefit when July 2015 comes around. Mr. Speaker, that benefit will be accessed by about 800 seniors. It was introduced in 2012 to assist our lower-income seniors with the cost of living in a personal care home. Mr. Speaker, that's what I call a government for the people. We share with our people, We share our benefits with our people. We work on what the people have told us we need to do. Mr. Speaker, we didn't stop there. We added $10 million to dedicated seniors care, which will bring the total to $14.5 million, which is a $3.5 million increase dedicated to enhance the Home First program. Mr. Speaker, Home First program is important to our community of Prince Albert because we are one of the communities that benefit from the Home First program. Mr. Speaker, we are also adding $4.7 million to reduce emergency department wait times. Mr. Speaker, that's an increase of $3 million from last year. Are we helping the people of this province? I would say yes, Mr. Speaker. The people of our province say yes. I've been out and about, as my colleagues have been, and we've been hearing the same thing, Mr. Speaker. Good job. We like what you've done. Yes, it's a tough budget. Do we want more? Always. We always want more, Mr. Speaker, but we are doing a good job, and the people are recognizing it. Mr. Speaker, our government also committed to improving long-term care infrastructure in the province. As I said, in Prince Albert alone, we got Pineview Terrace. In Swift Current, they will be getting a long-term care facility, and so will Leader, and so will Kelvington. They'll be getting an integrated care facility, Mr. Speaker. The 2015-16 budget continues to invest in programs and services that benefit seniors. Mr. Speaker, through the Ministry of Social Services, the province is fulfilling its 4-year commitment to increase benefits under the Seniors Income Plan and the Personal Care Home Benefit. Promise made, promise kept. Mr. Speaker, on that side of the House, they just talk, and never get around to doing anything of any substance. Mr. Speaker, let's look at what Ashley Martin from the Leader Post on March 21st, 2015 had to say. The article title says, "Med students are happy that seniors' care made a priority." Mr. Speaker, Jessica Harris, second-year medical student and member of the University of Saskatchewan Student Medical Society, said, and I quote, "The government sees seniors' care to be a priority." Mr. Speaker, I don't know what the members opposite are reading. I don't know what they're hearing. Mr. Speaker, when we talk to the people across the province, they know what we're doing in this province. They know what the budget says. They know how good a job we are doing. Mr. Speaker, I think it's time to move a little bit further into our social services, Mr. Speaker. Social services and social assistance adds up to a part of our 73% of our budget. Mr. Speaker, Saskatchewan's most vulnerable will benefit from continued investment in support programs for children, youth and their families. In 2015-16, the budget will also address the needs of people with disabilities and those in need of housing. For example, we are providing $7.7 million to help at-risk children, youth and families. This includes foster care and extended family care, medically fragile children with complex needs. Mr. Speaker, medically fragile children with complex needs, that hits home for Prince Albert. We have what's called Hope's Home. I was there when we had the grand opening, Mr. Speaker. It is a beautiful facility. It is set up specifically for children with medically fragile needs and their siblings, Mr. Speaker. One of the stories from one of the people that use that facility kind of tugged at my heartstrings, Mr. Speaker. This lady was a nurse, well, still is, and for many years she could not work in Prince Albert because she had a medically fragile child and she could not leave the child, and she knew a lot about medically fragile children, so she knew not to leave the child just anywhere, Mr. Speaker. When Hope's Home opened, she took that child and that child's sibling, took it down to Hope's Home, Mr. Speaker. What did that do? That added a better quality of life. Mr. Speaker, that nurse wanted to work in our healthcare system. Mr. Speaker, that nurse wanted her children to participate in activities that childcare will provide. Lots of other friends, lots of new activities. Mr. Speaker, those children are happy to be going to work, as they sometimes call it, because they like to copy what their parents say. And Mr. Speaker, that nurse is contributing to our society. She has a paycheck so that she can support herself, her family, and provide for the many needs of our community, Mr. Speaker. We are going to increase the benefits to the Saskatchewan Assured Income for Disability program for the 4th consecutive year with an additional $5.7 million. Mr. Speaker, the people that work with the Saskatchewan Assured Income for Disability program in Prince Albert was so pleased and told me on that day of the budget, he said, "I am so pleased that you took it upon yourselves to remember the most vulnerable in our society. I was really concerned because in the days of the past, what the NDP did was raise taxes, cut programs, chase people out of the province. But, Mr. Speaker, our people that take care of people with disabilities, Mr. Speaker, they're telling us that we did a good job." Mr. Speaker, I hope the members opposite are listening. We're also investing in social services and assistance to the tune of $1.2 billion in this budget, Mr. Speaker. That's an increase of 3.2% over last year's budget. What it includes are multiple ministries that provide programming and an increased program utilization for people with disabilities. That's $485.7 million, Mr. Speaker. That's up from last year. Mr. Speaker, we already talked about the increase to the the seniors' income plan, Mr. Speaker. I am now going to turn to how social housing, the transition will benefit people in greatest need. Mr. Speaker, in Prince Albert, our most vulnerable people will soon gain better access to affordable housing. It is because the decision to transition the affordable housing program into the social housing program will be occurring in our province's largest centres. Beginning March 1st, 2015, anyone who applies for government-owned rental housing in urban centres will only be eligible for the social housing rental program. Rent will be based on 30% of the income. Mr. Speaker, we didn't stop there, Mr. Speaker. We are providing a 1% funding increase to our community-based organizations. Mr. Speaker, over the session over the beginning of this year, January, February, when we weren't sitting down in Regina here, the member from Saskatchewan Rivers and myself had time to connect with some of our local organizations, the Early Childhood Intervention Program, Mr. Speaker. What those people told us really tends to tug at your heartstrings, and 1% increase in funding will be highly welcomed by them, Mr. Speaker. We have families that have special they have special needs in terms of intervention programming. That's why it's called Early Childhood Intervention Program, Mr. Speaker. What they do, they told us one story of this young mom who had trouble with alcohol, and her first couple of children had fetal alcohol syndrome, Mr. Speaker. It is very tragic because once people have fetal alcohol syndrome, they never get cured from it, Mr. Speaker. So with the ESIP program and the intervention of several programs combined, Mr. Speaker, they work together to help that mom not drink through her next couple of pregnancies, Mr. Speaker. What did that do? That instantly increased the quality of life for those children, Mr. Speaker. Can you imagine in the future those children do not have to struggle with fetal alcohol syndrome? Mr. Speaker, the member from Saskatchewan Rivers and myself have the joy of watching our grandchildren being raised in loving homes and seeing how much fun they have with their parents. And like I said, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I think our grandchildren are really quite brilliant. The member from Saskatchewan Rivers kind of agrees with me as well. And it is something that we wish for all children in Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. So when we can provide a 1% increase to programs for our community-based organizations, we are happy to do that, Mr. Speaker. As I said, safe, quality and affordable housing is a priority for our government. It continues to support and we are continuing to support the federal-provincial investment in affordable housing agreement, which has been extended to 2019 to fund new affordable housing supply, home renovations, home adaptations and rent housing supplements. Mr. Speaker, housing in Prince Albert is a big deal. We have many program partners, Mr. Speaker. Linda Boyer, from our manager from Prince Albert Community Housing Society, Inc. Her and I have been ribbon cutting many of the facilities that she's opened. Mr. Speaker, we have Brian Howell, our manager from Riverbank Development Corp. Mr. Speaker, we have Habitat for Humanity. That program was brought to Prince Albert by Frank Moore many years ago, Mr. Speaker, and our city has benefited most highly from it. Mr. Speaker, we had our past president, Morris Sawchuk, who took the program out to other communities such as Duck Lake. Mr. Speaker, our current president, Dwayne Hayunga, is a fabulous man that continues to support the Habitat for Humanity. Mr. Speaker, they have just recently brought Rob Dalziel on board, the executive director. Mr. Speaker, I know the fabulous work that he did for fundraising for the Victoria Hospital, so I'm sure Habitat for Humanity will be very pleased. Mr. Speaker, in this year's budget, we'll see $130,000 for Habitat for Humanity. We've seen housing for let me finish talking about the Habitat for Humanity, because I think it is such a great program, Mr. Speaker. I even took one of Ellen's hammers. I did ask for his permission before I did it, but I turned it into a pink hammer, Mr. Speaker, because I think if I'm going to go and volunteer for one of our Habitat homes and start pounding nails, I should be having a pink hammer. Mr. Speaker, he's a very gracious man, and he gave me the pink duct tape to do it. Imagine, pink duct tape. It was great, Mr. Speaker. So I have several pictures of me pounding nails. Now, it might sound strange to those contractors in the province that use air guns, Mr. Speaker, but we have to remember Habitat for Humanity is being built in a location that we'd have to borrow electricity from the neighbours. That doesn't make much sense, Mr. Speaker, so we ask for good old elbow grease and nails, hammers with pink handles to pound those nails. Mr. Speaker, for a family to get a Habitat for Humanity home, they must contribute a minimum of 500 hours of work. There is no interest to the mortgage, but they do not get the keys to their home, the official keys to their home, until they've proven for a year that they are good community members, that they can make those payments, and that they know how to take care of their home, Mr. Speaker. Talk about value added to our province. Talk about a better quality of life for our province, Mr. Deputy Speaker. What happens is when they pay back their mortgage, it is contributed back into the program and a pay it forward program. Mr. Speaker, our president and past president have recently assigned agreements with the Sask Polytech carpentry students. They've also worked with the federal penitentiary inmates that learn new and useful skills for building these homes. They have Carleton High School students that help to build the homes, Mr. Speaker. All of these are value-added skills training for our community, Mr. Speaker. It makes a difference. Our housing has added up to has been built for grandparents with dependents, for young families with one dependent, for families with parents and grandparents, Mr. Speaker. I can think of one of the sod turnings that I had where we had a family, their parents and their kids, Mr. Speaker. And we all know what little kids do, so we had a pile of dirt, and the little 2-year-old boy was crawling up and down and running around. And Mr. Speaker, I said, wow, to the little boy, I said, you remind me just like my little grandson, Everett. He is a going concern, Mr. Speaker, and with that little boy jumped into my arms and we gave each other a hug. Talk about a warm feeling for what we are doing for the people of our province, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I said that housing is important for Prince Albert, so I'm going to continue. We have $15.7 million in provincial funding for over 300 new rental units that were completed or in progress. Mr. Speaker, we've helped 132 households achieve home ownership. Up until this budget year, so up till 2014-15, for the 7 years that we've been asked to govern our province, $550,000 for 11 new Habitat for Humanity homes. Mr. Speaker, I could go on, but what this adds up to, Mr. Speaker, is if we put all the housing together in one spot, Mr. Speaker, it would cover over 8 square city blocks. That's a lot of housing, Mr. Speaker. That shows how we are committed to the people of our province, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that creates strong families. That creates a strong Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker. This past year, I also had the occasion to work with Donna Strauss and help her celebrate the 20th anniversary of Family Futures. She does great work for daycare in our province, Mr. Speaker. We also have other community organizations and people that are working together to help create a better quality of life for our people, Mr. Speaker. In PA, we've had many marches to celebrate peace, and we get to see our peace officers such as Police Chief Troy, Deputy Chief Kelly Steinwand. Mr. Speaker, we like to honour our peace officers. To me, Mr. Speaker, their bravery should be highly commended, and I commend them on this day in this legislature. Mr. Speaker, one of the shining examples of how our community takes the lead is through what we call the Hub, Mr. Speaker. It's a community mobilization project that was started in Prince Albert. We took several organizations, policing, healthcare, addictions and mental health, Mr. Speaker, education, Mr. Deputy Speaker, education. Everybody came together to create a prevention program for to help people prevent the path of crime, Mr. Speaker. $450,000 per year has been put into the Hub. Mr. Speaker, this past budget year, we've seen an increase in the hubs across the province or our community mobilization partnerships to over a dozen of them. Mr. Speaker, it didn't stop there. It's going across the country. In fact, Mr. Speaker, that model is being looked at around the world and is being utilized in many different fashions. Talk about a success story. Talk about improved quality of life. Mr. Speaker, I have some stats that since the implementation in February of 2011, what the Hub has delivered is some significant results in Prince Albert. From the baseline of 2010-2013, Mr. Speaker, our police service received 3,554 fewer calls for service. Mr. Speaker, our property crime rate has decreased by 29%, overall crime rate has decreased by 21%, and violent crime has decreased by 38%. Mr. Speaker, The past director, Ken Hunter, did a fabulous job. Our current director, Glenys Clark, is someone that I worked with. Glenys is a lady that comes up through the addictions and mental health field from the health region, Mr. Speaker. And she did a fabulous job. In fact, for part of my time as a registered dietitian, I worked in our mental health and addiction centre in Prince Albert. What happened is Glenys taught me many things. I taught her a few things back, Mr. Speaker. I had the occasion to attend the Addictions Professional Association of Saskatchewan event, Mr. Speaker, and we had Darren Tate, who is an addictions professional that works in the health region. What he did was he brought in Skid Row CEO Joe Roberts. That event, Mr. Speaker, told us firsthand how this gentleman, who is a Skid Row bum, as he called himself, in the streets of Vancouver, turned his life around, made multi-millions of dollars. So he calls himself the Skid Row CEO, and he had a very compelling story to share with the people of Prince Albert. Mr. Speaker, 1 out of 5 people are dealing with are affected by mental health and addictions. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased that our government is working together to create a strong Saskatchewan, because Saskatchewan is strong when our people are strong. That's why our government committed to providing greater supports for those experiencing mental health and addictions issues. And to that end, I'd like to thank Dr. Fern, Stockdale-Winder, and many others for their work to shape the recommendations that are included in a new mental health and addictions action plan. Working together for change, this 10-year mental health and addictions action plan for Saskatchewan is the culmination of extensive public consultation that puts a particular emphasis on the voices of people with lived experience. This action plan, which addresses the complex and often connected issues of mental health and addictions, includes the voice of family members, concerned citizens and providers from across the human service sectors. Our government has received and endorsed the report and remains committed to action that will improve the services provided to those living with mental health and addictions issues. Mr. Speaker, our government is a government for the people. Mr. Speaker, I would like to point out that we have a balanced budget, Mr. Speaker. Okay, Mr. Speaker, we have a balanced budget. We have not raised any taxes. We have a family of 4 that just for the 2014 year, for $50,000 income, will pay $166. Mr. Speaker, let's contrast that to the NDP of the past. In 2007, under the NDP, that same family paid $2,302. Mr. Speaker, I think we are working for the people of Saskatchewan. We are strong. We are working to control spending, Mr. Speaker. We have no tax increases. We have investments in infrastructure. We have job creation. We have investments in people. Mr. Speaker, our revenue tax sharing, Mr. Speaker, was a very beneficial event from our budget here, Mr. Speaker. What we did was we shared with everybody across the province, Mr. Speaker. And I would just like to share with you what SUMA President Deborah Button said about our revenue sharing. And I quote, "Today is a celebration, and I want to stress that. I feel very strongly that today the province sent a strong message to the cities, towns, villages, and our northern communities that we are a partner along with them in growing this province and planning for the future with the economy and, of course, the growth that comes along with that." Mr. Speaker, our people are strong. Our budget is strong. Mr. Speaker, from many people's strength. That is Saskatchewan, Mr. Speaker, from many people's strength. I support the budget. Thank you.